There we go. And let me hit this. Are you ready? Watch this. Banksy Talks podcast time. I am Jared Banks, and joining me today, the man, the myth, the legend himself, Mr. Jon Absey. Brother, how are you, man?
I am doing awesome. By the way, that video that you just ran in the beginning is awesome. I love that.
It's amazing what I can do with some idle time on my hands, right?
Adobe Illustrator.
So a lot of people might not know your name or your face, but they know who you are. For years and years and years here in Utah specifically, you were the Jazz Bear.
Yep. The original Jazz Bear back in 93.
So how do you become the Jazz Bear? Like, because when I go to school and I talk to my school counselor, it was, you can be an engineer, you can be a plumber, you can be a scientist, you can be a doctor if you're really good at school. Nobody ever says, hey, man, you can be the mascot for a NBA franchise.
You know, it definitely wasn't in college courses, that's for sure. It found me totally by accident. Because I was going to school in Fargo, North Dakota. I was going to Morehead State University, and I was going there with pre-law and ambitions to be an attorney. And here I be, sitting here.
And now you're riding sleds downstairs for the better part of 20 years and backflips and jumps and all kinds of stuff. You kind of set the bar for what the modern mascot should be, because that model now has been copied by everybody.
Not you know what had happened is when I first got in, because there were really only three main characters. There was the gorilla, the chicken, and the Philly fanatic, and I was watching them and copying them that first year because I'm just a stupid farm boy from Minnesota, little East Grand Forks, and I had no clue about mascots or sports. I was just not afraid of heights, and I was
and the costume fit,
but I just remember going in and copying these guys, for about a year and, doing what they were doing. And what I hated was I was living and dying by their sword. I was going in and when they succeeded, I succeeded. But when they failed, I failed. And I hated that. And I hated that I couldn't take 100% credit for the character's, popularity and stuff when it was growing. So after that first year, that's when I kind of stepped back. And I remember I went in, Grant Harrison, who's amazing, went in and talked to him and just said, hey, I have a feeling, or I don't have a feeling, but I want to change what we're doing with the character. And, I looked at what everybody was doing and I said, okay, nobody's doing stunts and nobody's doing charity work. And that was my direction. And I was one of the few guys that had a little bit of athletic ability and was able to be funny with the character. So I was able to kind of capture both sides of what a mascot is. So that's where I went, was the stunts and the charity work.
Well, the stunts, and then it became the backflips. Obviously, the toboggan down the stairs onto the court, the flipping off the ladders, all of those things. But then, like the human interaction, the things that I love the most, the silly spring stray, the bags of popcorn, the cake and the dude in the face, video that went viral, like all those things that you did that for a nonverbal character made it very human. Like it was clear that you were the number one fan of the Utah Jazz and nobody was going to step in your turf. I think the only person that's come close to it since you did it is probably Benny the Bull.
Oh, no. I love you for that, by the way. But Benny the Bull, he was amazing when he came on the job scene, whatever, his name is Barry Anderson. And I'll tell you what, man, to this day, I still will call him and see videos and just be like, you, my friend, are amazing. Like, he had a very unique ability, a lot like Rocky in Denver, where a few like hand motions and a weird head turn, and it was 1,000 words. I could literally read what they were trying to say through their body, movements. They were amazing. So God bless you. I feel that they're way above me. I thank you for putting me in that category.
Stop.
I feel like I was just one of those guys that was willing to put my body on the line and you know, go through the injuries. Those guys were funny and creative. You know, I just went out there and did stupid stuff that nobody dared do, and ate a lot of Mortab at the time.
And of course, the laundry list of injuries that go along with it, and we'll talk about that later. Let's back up though and talk about who is Jon Absey. Like, where were you born? Obviously, you mentioned, you know, Minnesota and Minot, all those different, the North Dakota, all of that. How did you grow up? Where did you grow up? What was life like for you growing up?
It was out of control. It's funny because my family always said I was raised by wolves, you know, and they always said when I was a kid, they'd always be like, you were a mistake. And you know how you sit there as a kid and I'd be like, Mom, Dad, am I really? Oh, no, you're not a mistake. And then when I got older, I went, I was a mistake. My dad was 62 when I was born. So
you were literally the oops baby. You were the caboose and the oops baby.
I was a huge oops baby. There's a gap between my next relative or my sisters. So, but it was interesting is like literally I had no parental guidance. My mom and dad were older and were just burned out from the other 6 kids they had. So I literally raised, like I hate saying it, man. I was young and out all night, just hanging out. I mean, I was just all over the place, doing stupid, crazy things, crawling stuff, you know, and it was just, I literally kind of raised myself, and my brothers and sisters kind of kept a tab on me here and there. But
they were just make sure you got home alive at some point, right?
Yeah, there was many times. I remember my brother, because I was in the hospital when I was a kid. I was about 9, and my brother was working at Bonanza, which is a restaurant up in Grand Forks, but he got a call and they're like, your brother's dead. He got in a motorcycle wreck, and my brother was like, holy hell, he's dead. But I was unconscious for 3 days, but everybody thought I was dead. It was kind of fun. It's funny now, but back then
it's funny now because you lived.
I lived.
So what's the earliest thing you can remember then getting into from your childhood? Like if you think as far back as you can go,
6.
what's the earliest thing that comes to mind?
5. It was 5. My earliest memory, this is no lie, this is going to be hilarious. Playing doctor with Katie Driscoll and Jill Dudgeon. So I lived out on a farm, and I know you asked. I was like, I lived out on a farm, and the only friends I had were Katie Driscoll and Jill Dudgeon, you know, about a quarter mile down the gravel road. And I remember the Kovars down the road from us had a fort, and we would always play in there. And yeah, there it is. 5. And then her mom busted us. And
playing doctor in the fort.
And I remember going home, and as I get home, my mom's on the phone, and I'm like, "Oh crap, I'm in trouble." So yeah, it was kind of funny.
And it was all downhill from there, right? That's where the shenanigans started, yep. and you've made, you know, a 45+ year career now of just straight shenanigans.
Big time shenanigans. Yeah, no, it was fun. The thing that was amazing is, you know, the Jazz, Grant Harrison and those guys, they allowed me a lot of rope, or they gave me a lot of rope. And I remember Grant always said that. He's like, I'm going to give you enough rope to hang yourself. Just don't hang yourself. And what they did, and I believe 100% is why the character, you know, became, you know, kind of popular here in Utah, was due to the fact that the Jazz and Grant kind of kept him out and let me drive the bus. The other part of it is, you know, and I wish I could say that, oh yeah, the success of the character is because of me. It is because of the hundreds and hundreds of people, just like, you know, I can even throw you in that. It has helped me create this. And a lot of people don't understand that, you know, this isn't me, you know, going in and like, this is what we're going to do. It was, you know, little doors that opened up because of, you know, people in the company or people outside the company helping me. And I can't thank everybody enough. I mean, it took a village to get that character to where it was, and it wasn't all me. So,
well, one of my favorite moments that I remember, and it was in some of your last years, kind of as the Jazz Bear, if I remember right. We did a halftime thing at the Jazz with some dancing old ladies.
Yep.
Do you remember that? And like we had there was this whole dance troupe of like old ladies that came out, killed it, like 30, 40 of them. I'm talking, when we say old, like 70s, 80s,
Yep.
90s, maybe some of these ladies.
Jean's Golden Girls is what they were called.
Yes, that's it. You remember it. And then at the end, we end up with you and like this. I mean, she looked like Estelle Getty. Like she
was 89 years old back then.
And like you end up in a dance battle center court and she hits like a split. Yep. And the roof blew off of that place. Yep. And I think that it was such a great moment because I think even though we never said a word in creating that bit, you knew in that moment that the star was not being the star.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, like that it wasn't about me in that moment. It wasn't about the Jazz Bear having in that moment. It was about you playing the heel so that she could have that moment. And it made all of us look so incredible. And I think it's a moment that I always remember standing there. And I remember just looking up and I saw your eyes through the car and your eyes were super big. Like, did this old lady just blow her hip out center court? And
no.
And then the roof blowing off of the Delta Center and just us walking off. And I thought, man, we really just created something that was super cool in the 2.5 minutes that they give you in between periods, you know?
Yep. No, she was amazing. And like you just said, I still can't believe at her age that she was able to drop down in those splits way better than I could do the splits at the time. I mean, that was awesome. But you're right, I think that was another part of what the Bear was being the, you know, like coming in like, I'm going to, you know, show you, and then all of a sudden being the heel so that either a little kid or, you know, a lady that could sing well or somebody who could do gymnastics well, you know, be able to trump me, you know, because, you know, it's always fun because they were technically the underdogs, you know, but
right.
Came out on top. So I love that part. I mean, I was always 100% willing to be the butt of the joke if it meant somebody else got the highlight.
So, you know, when one person wins, we all win, right? What are some other memorable moments for you? What are like your top 3 memorable Jazz Bear moments?
Dude, there's too many. Honest to God, that my career over 25 years was so freaking amazing, Jared. It was, I don't even know where to start.
Okay, well, let me rephrase it this way, and we'll break it down. What was the most dangerous thing you got to do, and what's the most dangerous thing they never let you do, where they said, John, this is too much?
Okay, let's go right to the dangerous that they never let me do. I was in the military, and I used to call artillery, and I had this parachute for years. And what they would do in the military is I would call an incendiary round or a loom round, and it would pop in the air and the parachute would make it come down slow, but this thing would light up a battlefield, you know? I mean, it was just so bright. And I remember one day, you know, I grabbed a couple of the parachutes and when I came back from Desert Storm, I had those with me. And when I was sitting in the arena, I was talking to Grant and I took a duffel bag and stuffed it full of clothes and some weight. And I was throwing it off of the arena and it would pop open and basically, you know, it would hit. It was going slowish, but it would hit. And I was like, Grant, I'm parachuting in for the next game. And he's like, what? And I'm like, I want to parachute in from the ceiling.
They're going to drop you from the catwalks at the top.
Yep. And I remember I went down. We had 2 guys holding the parachute, so it was kind of open. And I threw the duffel bag off and it comes in. And, you know, by the time it catches air and it hits, I mean, it's going kind of fast. But in my head, I was like, I can handle that, you know, and maybe we put a mat there. But it was, that was turned down. Like you're not parachuting in. But I still think I could have, I don't think I'd have died. But I mean, I think I could have made it.
Right. You'd have made the 5 o'clock news. Jazz Bear breaks both his legs center court parachuting in.
Oh, but God, to this day, I still feel like I could have done it. It's in my heart, man. It's in my heart. I think I could have made it. And then
what do you think? What was the most exciting one that you can't believe they let you do? Like you got away with it. You talked them into letting you do something.
Honestly, the one-armed handstand, I still can't believe they let me do. But I mean, like when I think back, like riding the bull when I did the professional bulls a couple times.
Uh-huh.
Still can't believe, because I remember Rob Smits, one of the world-class rodeo clowns, he told me, he's like, look, they've never seen something like you come off their back. He goes, I have no idea what they're going to do. And in my head, I was like, they're just going to be high school bulls. But no, man, when they loaded that chute, it was the real deal. And I remember straddling this thing, and I remember sitting in the pen, and everybody's talking, and I never talked, and I'm talking. I'm like freaking out, like going, oh my hell, because I've never felt so much power and so vulnerable and small. I mean, I was like, oh my hell, this thing is, 2,000 pounds of just solid muscle. And I remember it leaned against the in the cage or the gate, and it leaned against the back bars. And I remember they were kicking, trying to get him off of my leg. And the guy said, are you okay? And I was just adjusting, and I nodded my head like that. And they opened the gate thinking I was like ready to go. And that thing jumped out. And I just remember I was on its butt. I mean, it was crazy. And I remember come flying off. I hit the dirt. I got up, and I was just running for the railings. And then,
but it's all instinct at that point, right? Like, this is 20 pounds of meat that's coming to stomp me out.
It was crazy. But yeah, the rodeo clowns were so amazing. They led that thing away from me, and I crawled up the bars. But I think one of the ones that I'm still shocked at was I was down at summer games in Cedar City there. And I remember we were going to take, every year I'd come up with a new stunt, and we were going to take a motorcycle and jump over this fire pit. And they built a trough for me that was about 20 feet long and a ramp. And I remember I practiced without the fire, and, because I'm a farm boy and I drove motorcycles. So I was able to make the jump and land it pretty well. Even though I blew my knee out, that I had just gotten off knee surgery, but I landed it. And then we practiced once with fire, and I put a little bit of lighter fluid on it. And we took these boards and wrapped them in gauze and soaked it up and did the jump. And, the fire wasn't so bad because I was the one who put the lighter fluid on it, but I had a big can. And I remember the night of the show, they went out there and they just dumped all of it on there. And so the trough was like loaded with lighter fluid. I remember I came out on the motorcycle. They're talking about it. I go up the ramp. I come down, and I nod my head. They light it. And this thing just goes woof. And the flames were, I swear to you, 20 feet high. And I was like, I am going to die. I'm going to blow up in that thing, because it was just a wall of fire.
And you're in a fursuit.
And I'm in a fursuit with a gas tank that I don't, I'm like, what if this thing blows up? So I go driving around the track, because in my head, I'm like, I'll drive around until it dies down a little bit. And I drove around the track, and I go back up the ramp, and I come back down, go around the track, and I'm parked, like on the, how a track and it turns. So I was parked in one straightaway corner, and the flames are over here where the jump is. And Luke, my old assistant, comes up, and he's like, you got to go, man. And I'm like, look at the flames. And he goes, you got to go. And I was just like, oh, hell. And I was just like, okay, boom, took off, went around. And it was awesome, because as I came off the jump, I could feel the heat from the fire. So I actually kind of closed my eyes, because it burned so bad, because this was wide open, And I go blowing through the fire. When I watch on video, when I come out, I'm on fire. And when I land, whatever, it snuffed it out. But I remember I landed, and I set the bike down, and I was touching myself like, oh my God, I went through. But when I looked at my suit, I was all singed. Like the fur just all singed. And I saw that video, seeing that I was literally on fire coming out of it. Yeah, that was crazy. That was stupid.
What a wild ride, man. Literally, right? A wild ride.
Exactly.
So we talk a lot about giving back, and you're instrumental in the Mascot Miracles Foundation, and to this day still run the nonprofit and are involved in giving back. Let's talk about some of that and what inspired that desire to give back. Did that come from being a kid and kind of being a feral wild child and not having that support? Was there something in that, or am I reading too much into that? What sparked that need? Because it's on top of everything you've done. I know that's a genuine, close to your heart passion, is giving back to these kids as part of the Mascot Miracles Foundation and the other things that you do?
Brother, you know what? I was just, when I got in and I was working, I literally felt so blessed to have a job like I had that I really wanted to give back. And then with my job, I was up at Primary Children's all the time and working charities. And I mean, I still remember, back a couple years in, I was out doing charity work, and the Jazz were like, we only want you to work on these 3 charities. And I told them, I was like, well, if I do that, I'm never going to really get out in the community, and I want to be out in the community. And we arm wrestled hard over that decision. And I remember, for about 4 months, I would go out and do an appearance at a Special Olympics or diabetes walk, and I would get on TV, or I'd be in the back, and I'd get called in the next day, and they'd be like, hey, we told you you're not supposed to do, any charities except for these 3. Oh, okay, I won't. And then that night, go out and get caught on TV doing another charity event and get called in the next day for 4 months, just pounding it out. And I still remember going in and like, look, you guys can fire me, but I go, that is my dream. That is my passion. I'm going to give back. And if you're going to fire me for doing charity work, God bless you. I said, but I'm not stopping. And it was a decision that they had to make. And thankfully they saw the light and realized that it'd be better for me to be out in the community. But that drive really just comes because I was just so grateful, and I still am. I have amazing friends and amazing family, and giving back. Everybody should want to give back. I mean, it makes me feel better to give than ever to get. So that's why I do it.
We have an old saying back in New Zealand that I got from my grandfather that we don't give because we have a lot. We give because we know what it feels like to have nothing.
Right. That's a great saying. I'm going to write that down.
It's something that I've carried with me for years and years and years. And every time I vocalize that and say it out loud, I have yet to hear anybody disagree, and it's really because I think we've all been there. We all know what it's like to have nothing. And so to have other people around you that are so willing to give, even when many times they don't have much themselves, is always so special.
Well, and then just for the sheer fact of, like, no matter what you're doing, it doesn't matter how small, you think it is, but the fact that you literally could be changing somebody's life, into a different trajectory that would be amazing. And I think people forget that, even if it's a little thing, it can make a big difference. Just like the whole pebble in the pond and, the ripples, you never know where it's going to go. I mean, like an example is, we were doing, the Bear Hugs Christmas shop back in the day. I mean, we did that 30 years ago. And just a number of years ago, just before I got done in 2018, there was a guy that came up at the shop and he was talking to me and he said, look, he goes, I, want to thank you for what you guys have done here with the Christmas shop. He goes, because I was one of those kids back in the day. And ever since, he shows up every Christmas and he volunteers and helps out those kids. And it's just kind of cool, just to see, somebody that didn't have anything, didn't have a Christmas, and we were able to supply it for him. And now he cared enough to come back and do it, in a whole different capacity. So it's awesome.
It's all cyclical, man. It builds and grows from there. So let's talk about your military service, man, because I know that's not something you talk about a lot. When did you join? What was your inspiration to join, and where did you serve?
So I was in Minnesota, and I started because when I got in, it was for college, technically. But then
I was going to ask if it was it a go to jail or join the army kind of thing, John?
It could have been. No, I joined technically for school, and I was with 132nd Mech Infantry out of Minnesota, and when Desert Storm and all that stuff happened back in the day, I just remember going, you know what? I want to be part of this, because I really did. I enjoyed the military. The military made me grow up quick. And just a side note, I still 100% wish and believe, I think every kid out of high school should have to go at least do basic and go do AIT so that they can learn a skill. But I'll tell you what, it makes you grow up knowing that you don't have mom and daddy there to protect you or to stand up for you and fight your little fights. I just think that everybody should have to go in, because it made me grow up. It made me respect authority. It made me respect, the people I'm with. You get a feeling of that band of brothers. You have your guys that look out for you, and and you're looking out for these other guys. I just learned a ton from it. So when it came around, my unit wasn't going. So I volunteered, and I got attached to a unit out of Mississippi, and God bless them. I mean, it was different. I love Mississippi.
Going from Minnesota to Mississippi,
and it was a whole different feel. But it was a lot of fun. I experienced and got to see stuff that was incredible. I mean, it was some crazy stuff, but I would never change it for anything. It was an experience, that is for sure. And then when I got out, we deactivated and came back home, and then all this started. So, but yeah, I was a forward observer. I was what do you call, like a fist or a Fox 13? Or
so 13. You go in. The first Desert Storm for a lot of people. Not the second invasion of Iraq, right?
And it was little Toyota trucks with 50 cal machine guns. Yeah.
Right. So you go in, are you part of like the expeditionary force, like as that lead spear going in? Like, when did you see action? I'm artillery. So I call it. So I'm like a forward observer. What they do is, if you have a front line and a front line basically, and if your your artillery is back here in your friendly area, and a forward observer goes up and has to get really close to the enemy's front line, so that when that artillery is coming over, you can look and spot it, and then it's like a video game. And I think that was part of why I liked it, because you'd see it pop here, and you'd look, and you'd be looking at your map, and you'd call for adjustments, and you'd be like, right, fire for effect, and 50 yards, and then they would lob more rounds in, and you're just walking this artillery into the target. And it was just fun. I don't know how to explain it, but the thing that's scary is they have scouts that are out looking for us, because if they can take us out, now artillery can't be firing. So we were always doing, cat and mouse stuff, having a call, move really quick. And we didn't have any armament except for our M16. That was about it. What's the closest you ever got to the enemy finding you?
Not really. Not really at all. I mean, it was just like you said, that first fight was easy. I mean, they were surrendering to like a tank surrendered to a Humvee.
Yeah.
They were crapping themselves. I mean, because we came in hard, we were using air support, and we really didn't have to get that close. It's so flat and long. And then with our technology, like on a fist vehicle, there's this, it's been so long since I've been in, but there's a laser designating device that you can sit in, and you can laze these targets, and it'll tell you exactly where that is 3 feet on the earth, within 3 feet. But
and how much that technology's changed too, because I've talked to friends that have served in Iraq and Afghanistan more recently, and they said, during Operation Desert Storm, we could look at a building and we could hit the door of that building with a laser guided missile. He goes, by the time we got to Iraq and Afghanistan, we could pick a door and send that missile through the keyhole.
It's incredible.
It really difference in the way that they were able to do it. But you were basically the guy that was like, X marks the spot, send it here.
Yep. That was us. And we could call it in. I mean, it was there. Yeah. There were some moments, where like, I don't even know how to explain it. When you have this firefight going on and it's dark and things are exploding, it's almost like a strobe, because it's pitch black. And I remember just feeling like, overwhelmed. And I remember stumbling back because it was windy, and I still remember tracer rounds shooting downfield or range. And I just remember the explosions happening. And it was like my sensory overload just went through the roof. And I remember stumbling back, just going, holy hell. I had to like take a break and just gather my emotions and my thoughts and be like, okay, here we go. But it was, it's crazy. It's crazy.
How long was that? You were in for
6 years.
6 years.
Yep. So,
and then you come back and you decide you want to be a lawyer.
Yeah, basically. And then ended up being a mascot. So,
and then you end up wearing a bear suit for 25 years.
Yeah. it was, though, I mean, it's been a crazy life, but, and, a lot of people always talk about, oh, I'd like to go back and change this or that. I mean, there's very little that I'd change. I've had some of the craziest experiences and some of the funnest and some of the best bonding moments with people. And it's amazing.
So let's talk about family life, because that's not your typical 9 to 5, right? Like that's not your normal situation. How does that affect your family life when the mask is off?
Horrible. I'll tell you what, that's one thing I would change. I'm glad you brought that up. Yes, there's something I would change. And I've talked on it where I always say, the bear was really successful. And I don't even like the word success. I'd rather just say that, because I don't want to be successful. And I don't think people should strive to be successful. I think people should strive to be of value more than success. And that's where I always, I would like to be too. And I think that's where the charity part comes in. But in the end, I failed horribly as a father and a husband. And I wish I would have been an okay mascot and a hell of a father and a successful or a really great father, husband, because I was just never home. I put all my freaking apples into that mascot character, and I put all my time in there. Like, look, I'm doing it for us, but it was selfish. It wasn't about all of us. It was just about how far can I get this character to climb this ladder? What's my next level? I always felt like I would get to a level and be like, okay, now I want to get here. I want to do something bigger. I want to do something better. I want it to grow. And I wish I would have been more focused on, I want to be the best father. I want my children to see me all the time. And I missed a lot of stuff, Jared, and it really bugs me. And I wish that's one thing I wish I could change. That'd be the first thing I would change.
Has that changed now?
Yeah, I'm home a lot now, but I mean, it's like, but they're all grown up and out of the house, so it doesn't really make a difference. So.
Well, the point that I wanted to make there though was like, yeah, you missed those moments before. The whole I can always make more money, but I can't make more time.
Right.
Where life has now thrown you an opportunity to reinvest that time and create, albeit adult relationships with them, to build those relationships, right?
It's tough though. I mean, and I'm not kidding you. I hope you kids are watching, but it's tough because they're adults and they've grown to have resentment, here and there, and it's hard to break that down. Like, oh, now you care, and now you want to be, at this event or that event with us, and blah blah blah. But yeah, I wish I could change all that, but because it's everybody sits and thinks. When it comes to a job, and you can attest to this. I mean, it's, there's so many people we've talked to. Everybody thinks, oh, my job's going to appreciate me and my job will be there. Hell no. They don't give shit or crap.
No, they don't. Look, this is a podcast. You can say shit and hell and damn and ass. Like,
but you know what I mean? Yeah, you know what I mean? I love that. But I just wish I would have realized then that all the effort and time that I was given the jazz was worthless. It really was in the end. I mean, it helped, but I'm just another number, just like everybody else. Everybody thinks that they appreciate it or they're going to be there for you. Nope, it ain't going to be that way.
Do you think that this, and I hate to say it this way, but this next generation of kids after you and I, because we're of a certain age now, right? I think people are more aware of that now than we ever were. Because for us, like, and especially for a lot of times for military guys, even, like, you are defined by what you do. Like, your MOS is your identity in the military, right? Like, we are defined as men so many times by what we do in the office, by what hat we wear, not by who we are. We're not defined by being good people. I'm defined by the title on the business card. And I feel like that people are more aware of that now.
100%. No, you nailed it. And that's honestly why, because I remember sitting down and I said this to Gail Miller, because she had asked me, because there was a big, after Larry died, there was a big transition that drove the jazz down a little bit. And I remember sitting down with her and she asked me, and I said, and she's like, well, how do we fix it? Because she was asking about the culture of the jazz. And I told her, I go, it's this person and this person. They're killing it. And she asked me, well, how do you fix it? And I was like, take away titles. You know, just like I have 2 businesses right now. I don't have anybody with a title. I don't like titles. If we're going to do a business, I want all of us to feel like a team. I don't want, and I understand that, you know, there needs to be this hierarchy. And I know a lot of people are just sold in that, yeah, you need a title. And it's like, no, man, you're getting paid the same with or without the title. And I go in all the time in the back shop and I'm like, look, we're a team. And I am just the same level as you when it comes to this work. The only thing we need to worry about is just getting our stuff done, helping each other out and supporting. And you know, and I feel like it's doing pretty well. Like everybody just, we're good to go. Like I hated when we would get in there, and when you get in a big business like that, you have these guys that are, you know, little dick guys, and they flex that title. You know what I mean? And you just sit there and you're like, really? You know, and that's what's hard for me is you have guys that literally have no understanding about what you do or I do or what they're doing, but yet they're going to make a decision that's going to affect you and the company, but they've never taken 5 seconds to sit in your shoes and really take a look at what the situation is. But because they got a title, they're going to make it.
Well, I think there's a lot of that in corporate America in general, right? There's guys that write really good emails that play the politics game. And I think, and this is something that brings me kind of my next point. Like a lot of times in modern corporate America, people are given leadership positions, not because they're good leaders, but because they're good at a job.
Yep.
And then when they don't do that job anymore, but they're expected to lead other people, they don't know how to do that.
Yep.
You know, and so what can we take away from your time in creating a brand, right? That's really what we're talking about with Jazz Bear, is creating a brand. What can we take away from all of that? What's the way to dumb it down to the simplest way you can on how to create that culture? Because you mentioned it in that conversation with Gail. How do you create a healthy culture?
Well, I mean, so, you know, when Jazz Bear started, I had, you know, the Bear crew. And the cool thing is I had guys that worked with me the entire time, 25 years. And I feel like what I did, like when I look back at what created the success or the value of the character, I look at it as one, it wasn't about me. It was about us. I wanted everybody to share in the success, not just me. When we went out there and we did a great skit or whatever, it was we. It was never me. And I also made sure that you know, poured over into the custodial, the ushers, the security, because a lot of people forget that when it comes to an event like that, there's more than just me and my Bear crew. It takes everybody. And in order to make that whole event come off successful out of the whole thing, you need security, ushers, everybody's got to be doing it. And I just always made sure that it wasn't about me, it was about us. And I made sure that I thanked and appreciated everybody. The other thing was just little acts of kindness. I remember this is great. I like this story, but I mean, I remember in the winter, I'd always bring pizzas to security. And then in the summer, I'd always bring ice cream cones to security office and just say thank you, because so many people forget, you know, the people that are not highly recognized, if that's a better way to put it. But I remember going in and always doing that. And my favorite story is Steve Starks, the president of the team, had pulled up to the back lot and I was pulling up behind him. And the circus was in this day. And I remember I had my windows down and I heard the security lady talking to him and saying, you can't park here. They got the whole back lot. You need to park over in the north east corner, blah, 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 and going on and on and on. Well, I back up. He backs up. He pulls away. And I pull up and she looks at me and she goes, you can park right down there. I got to go down and park. And I'm like, hey, you know, I'll just be a minute. She goes, you can park as long as you want. And it was stuff like that, because that guy never once took a second to thank them or show appreciation to them. And that is what's wrong with corporate America. You have these bosses because I have a title and you're a security person or custodial, that they look down on you instead of looking at you as part of the team. And that's where we have our dysfunction with corporate America. And you have people getting disgruntled, and because I don't know. There. That's
so what I got out of that was kindness, gratitude,
yep,
collaboration, and effort.
Perfect. You said it way better than me. I could have shortened it.
Just as you're telling those stories, like I'm like, okay, what's the message here? And that's really it, right? When it all boils down to it. And if we look overall at what the legacy of your time as the Jazz Bear was, acts of kindness.
Yep.
Right? Whether it was a high five to a kid at their first Jazz game as you come up the hallway, because you don't get to see a lot of it, but knowing that was my friend, the Jazz Bear, going up the stairs, knowing that you stopped because you saw me and you gave my kid a high five, and then you turn around and I see his reaction, but the kid behind me got a high five and I see his reaction to his father. Those, something as small as acknowledging that child in that moment was there, those small acts of kindness to obviously the service that you gave through all of the charitable giving, those moments of kindness, the gratitude, the hard work, clearly the hard work physically and in the preparation to do all the things that you've done, just such a great example of how it should be done in entertainment or anywhere else, bro.
God bless you. I appreciate that. I just loved. That is one thing I do miss, is being able to create moments. I had that ability because of the character and the situation I was in. I loved finding that kid that you could see was probably his first Jazz game, or he was with his parents and they were the first time, or somebody you could see, they had a little disability or there was something. And I loved being able to just take them beyond that curtain, you know what I mean? Because there's always that like protective ring, and the players and the NBA or whatever team it is, and they keep everything arm's reach away. And I love being able to take somebody and just look, like, I just broke the barrier for you. And I would walk around and introduce them to Karl Malone or Stockton or, back in the day, Kobe Bryant or, any of those guys. And I loved just creating that moment that they, that nobody else is going to ever get. So it was fun.
Super special. And so many of those, too many to probably count, that we could talk about and share about. Lastly, I want to go into this because you mentioned Karl, you mentioned Kobe, and so many of these others. Who was always the best to interact with in all of the places, whether it was a visiting team coming down that knew you and your reputation for what you were going to do, or whether it was one of our franchise players? Who was always the best or most excited to acknowledge what you were doing as part of the show they were putting on?
For me, and a lot of people aren't going to remember this name, but Clyde Drexler was awesome.
Clyde the Glide.
Clyde the Glide. And Charles Barkley was awesome. So I love those old school guys. And for us, I mean, all the players on our team always treated me so well. Like, I mean, there was a few guys that I have no desire to ever really see. I mean, there's a couple of guys, but they were that way to everybody. But my favorite guy, I mean, like to this day, it was Greg Ostertag. And I know everybody's just like, oh, really? But I mean, it's like, look, that man was so down to earth. And what I loved about him is the fact that you'd have a lot of people. There were like 3 different types of personalities when it came to an NBA player. You had the personality that they had when you'd see them in the locker room, right? And the thing that I hated is the second they left that locker room, when they were on the court, it was a whole different person. And if you saw them out in public, a whole different person. And I hated that they were just this, you never know what person you were going to get. But
they created their own characters, right? They had put their own mask on.
Yeah, they did. They'd have to put their own mask on. And I hated it, one, for them because they had to be somebody else all the time. But 2, I loved Ostertag because who he was in the locker room, who he was on the court, and who he was out in public were all the same. He was just genuine. And I really hate that a lot of people took that as a negative, but that is the biggest positive. And I wish every player could do that. Greg was amazing. And to this day, we still talk to each other and we're friends. And I just appreciated his sincerity and his just down to earth, real person approach to the sport. And I know a lot of people didn't like it, but you know what? Screw him. He's a better person for it in my book.
Ain't no better way to end it, man. Jon Absey, the original Jazz Bear, a personal friend of mine, Mascot Miracles, and all the other things you do. Big shouts out too, by the way, because you are continuing to train the next generation of mascots with your work currently as well. We want to throw in a little shout out there for our boy Koa a little bit.
Yeah. No, Koa's, he's doing awesome. No, you know, I've been really fortunate that, you know, I'm still in the mascot world. So I'm, you know, building characters and you know, still doing, you know, a little consulting here and there, you know, to try and help mascots out.
We're talking about Koa, the mascot of the Utah Warriors and Major League Rugby. If you haven't been out to a game, if you want to see Jon, if you want to see the next generation of mascot knowledge being passed down in some of the things that Koa is able to do, it's a great experience, one of the best fan experiences out there, in large part to you, my friend. So thank you. I'm blessed to still be able to work with you in some small way in doing that. So
you're amazing, and thank you. And I have to say hats off to Koa, because I don't know how the hell he gets around that field, because that is big. I never realized how big that rugby field was until I had to start walking it. And he's out there running around all over. So he's got a lot more energy and ambition than I ever did. So.
He's also got a motorcycle that gets him across that half the time too.
But still, I'm like, God bless you, man. You run it. You go.
Jon Absey, thank you so much for being on the Banksy Talks podcast. It's a podcast about people, and you are one of the best people I know, brother. Thank you so much for your time.
Jared, I love you. Thank you so much.